y'all, it's Laura, and I'm back with a Double Dare You with my friend Christina Sorge, and today's challenge is to mix white with cream. Now for some people that might be super easy, but for me it is a bit of a challenge. I prefer white-based products, white-based papers, embellishments, etc. Not a big fan of cream or off-white even. I tend to lean very, very crisp and white, which is why I like brands like Pink Paisley and Pink Fresh Studio, a lot of pink, but a lot of American Crafts brands are very white based, and that is definitely my personal preference. Now, this cover was from a DIY shop paper pad, and I have used all of the papers from it, so I decided to go ahead and use the cover as a grid background behind my photo. And this is a really fun photo of my two oldest kids. It's a couple of years old, from 2017, so of course my son has short hair, my daughter has long hair. That's a clue it's an old photo because it's now the opposite. But these were some cards they were hand making for the kids at St. Jude. And it was for Valentine's Day. We were sending them Valentines along with their scout troops. And so I thought it was a really great picture to encapsulate a lesson that we try really hard to impress upon our kids, and that lesson is to care for others. And not just people you know, but to care for people you don't know. To be kind, be generous with your time, with your caring for others, with your attention to others, and to just see outside of yourself, which is not easy for teenagers, okay? It's not easy for anybody, but it's really not easy for teenagers. And this is something that's been really important to my husband and I to impress upon all of our kids, is to care for other people and to see other people's needs and do our very best to help when we can. Well, making cards is something very small, and it may not seem like it's a huge thing, but for the person receiving it, who is sitting in the hospital, potentially fighting cancer, getting a handmade card from another kid does mean something. It might just bring a smile to that person's, day, and I think that's worth doing. And so that is why we're making the cards. They made a bunch each to send, and then the scout troop took them up to St. Jude. And I was so impressed with these guys who were having fun, laughing, coming up with jokes to put inside the cards. It was just so powerful to see your kids getting the message. To see it getting through, that they were putting effort into it. It wasn't just, oh gosh, I have to do this. They were getting it. They understood that it was important and that the kids reading it really did care what was in them. And so I was very proud of them. I took a picture in the moment, and I'm glad I did. I mean, it's good to have things like this where, is this some big event? No, but it pushed me to think about the journaling in a little different way. I could have just put in my journaling, making cards for St. Jude kids, and that'd be it. And I mean, that's true. It's what's happening. But instead, it really triggered for me this thought process of, why are we doing this? To go a little deeper with my journaling. And that's something I've been wanting to do a lot more of lately. And I'm going to do it on this one in particular. Now, reaching into this kit, I have a lot of these little pretty little studio titles left, so I am going to bring in one of those and try to get that used. And I don't have a ton of embellishments left at this point. So I think this is going to be the very last page that I make with this particular collection, because I'm down to one piece of paper with some scraps and very few embellishments. So I think we're going to have to call it done. Might squeeze in another scraps layout, but we'll see. We'll see. I did bring in a cut file piece. This was in my Secret Not Secret kit that I added to for my stash kit for November. And this has a photo strip. I was going to use the smaller leftover piece from a previous layout, and it just wasn't enough on the page. And so I end up bringing in a larger piece later on and putting it over the top of the photo. But first I'm going to bring in quite a few little random embellishments here and just try to get them used. And I find that even the trickier things, like I have a couple of lemons and an orange, And I just tuck those behind the photo and behind other embellishments, and it just reads as a circle and not necessarily as a lemon or an orange. And so keep that in mind when you're looking at those embellishments that are a little bit odd, a little bit very specific. Maybe they're not really your usual thing. I would just see if you can tuck them into a cluster, and then they can be recognized for what they actually are, just for their general shape and or color. And so that's a great way to use up those embellishments that maybe they don't appeal to you, or they just would stand out too much on a page, which is what I always run into. Things like bicycles, things like scooters, things like a tall stack of macaroons. They kind of draw too much attention to themselves, and I find those a bit tricky to use because I always want to focus on my photo and not on the embellishments. The embellishments are just pretty little add-ons to give it a little embellishment, but the photo has to stay the focus. So grabbing the bits and pieces that I think I can use, there was quite a bit in this Fancy Pants pack that I wasn't terribly interested in, and so after I'm kind of flipping through it and trying just about everything that I can, I do end up just switching to some leaves and greenery because that's a lot easier for me to work with. A little more in my wheelhouse, we'll say. But I do try a few of the different things, and I left this in so you could see that this process is just experimenting. It's not a perfect process. It's not I know right away which pieces I'm going to use. No, I experiment. I try different things. I see what works and what doesn't. Does this appeal to me? Does it not? Maybe I like the shape of something that I'm holding, but not the color. And so then I look and see, well, do I have a better color? And sometimes trying one piece will trigger an idea with another piece. But if you get down to embellishments that you just don't like the shape they're in. For example, this collection has boots. I have no idea what I'm going to use boots for, but what I could use them for is to punch them into other shapes like hearts and stars, and I can definitely use those. So if I decide to do one more layout with this November kit, it will probably be a scraps layout where I punch the leftover pieces of paper and the embellishments that I don't really love into an easy shape like a heart, a star, a circle, hexagon, etc., and just build away with a layout like that. So if you would like to see that kind of scraps layout, let me know in the comments below and I will go ahead and plan on filming it. Otherwise, I'll probably just quit this kit right here because I've pretty much run out of paper and don't have a ton of embellishments to pick from. I do squeeze on a couple of Scrap and Happy Studio Flare, epoxy flare. I do like the epoxy ones because they're much thinner. I can actually tuck them behind things, which is how I prefer to use epoxy flare. So I have a lot of circles on this page, and it just made it easier to fill the space without drawing too much attention to itself. I do tend to lean towards very simple shapes like that, for that reason, because they fill the space, they make it look heavily embellished, but they don't pull away all of the attention because they're very detailed pieces. Because they're simple shapes, they don't do that. So once I pulled in this one piece of leaves or flora, I decided, maybe I want to use more of that. So I have pretty much two clusters on this layout. One on the bottom left, one on the roughly middle right. And I'm going to be playing around with these a lot, pulling it apart, putting it back together a couple of times before I find exactly what I'm looking for. Here's that larger piece of photo strip I end up using instead, and I really like the difference this made behind my photo. It really helped to frame my photo and bring it to the front of the attention. It's a lot like a photo mat, but it's just a black photo strip. One of these I need to use as an actual cut file and back it with something. I'll have to give that a go. There's not a whole lot to the frame to back it to attach it to, so I'd have to be kind of careful how I did that. But I do really like the way this one turns out. It's a little bit different, a little quirky, a lot of fun, and I really think that that's perfect for kids' photos. And so once I get everything in place, I will glue and tape it all down off camera. I won't make you watch that whole process, but I do leave in the decision-making process. You can see where I started, where I ended up, and how I got there. So once I decided to use these two leaves, this really changed how I was viewing the entire clusters layers of embellishments. And I start to play around with some ideas about where things should fit, how the leaves should go, and what type of smaller embellishments I was going to use. And because I already had those epoxy flare on there, I decided to bring in a couple of acrylic hearts as well, the small ones. And I'm a big fan of small embellishments because you can do this. You can cluster them together and make them look like a larger embellishment. But in my mind, this is a little bit more interesting. To have all of these little elements together is just a little bit more interesting to me to look at than having one big piece right there. So once I get this all in place, I will, like I said, go ahead and glue it all down. Then I'll come in with my scattering and splattering. Now, I did add these little butterflies that I cut out from a 6x8 paper pad to the grid at the back, just to add a little bit of interest and detail. And I'm going to add one here at the bottom left and middle right so that I can add little butterfly trails behind them, which adds a little bit of movement and detailing as well. I did add this little thankful to the tab, so because I am very thankful for my kids and the positive attitude they brought to this project. And here I come with my Gold Nouveau to add little butterfly trails behind. So I have very black and white papers on a cream background, and then the paper pad section that I used for my grid has a cream base. So I've got 2 creams, 2 black and white, and that helps to balance out the layout, makes it easier to mix the cream and the white. So I do want to see what you make with this challenge if you decide to take it on. If you want an additional little challenge, try to use a little bit of packaging like I did as well. Let me know what you make. Show me in my Facebook, Scrapbook all the pictures, or you can tag me on Instagram or in pretty much any scrapbooking Facebook group, because I'm in a bunch of them. So if you want to show me what you made, I would love that. And I'm really curious how Christine is going to take on this challenge as well, because I happen to know she's a white fan as well. But that's it for this one, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, bye!